In this tutorial, we're going to take a brief look at tables and their features. First, we'll take a look at this already put together table, and then we'll switch to a layout and create our own start from scratch. So this table, we're looking at it in the preview mode, and that hides all of the guides. We have a header row, and notice as I move my cursor with the text tool selected, my cursor changes to different icons. This arrow pointing to the right allows me to select rows, and if I move it up on top, it allows me to select columns, and if I move it to the top left and it's angled down towards the right, that allows me to select the whole table. Now if I click in a cell and my cursor is flashing, I can tab through these cells by pressing the tab key, and that takes me forward. If I hold my shift key down and press tab, it takes me back. Now with my cursor in a cell, if I look up at the control panel, I can see that this text is left aligned. I can also center align it or right align it. If I go up to the table menu and choose cell options, and I look at the text, I can set this vertical justification to align to top, align to center, align to bottom. And I have my preview button chosen. That's why I can see this information. So if I click on the header row and I go up to the table menu and choose cell options, I can analyze the strokes and fills. Now what I'm looking at right now is one table cell. And so the outline that I see here is the outline for this table cell. Currently it's set at 1 point weight, black in color, and tint at 25%. If I change the tint to 100% and click on OK, you can now see that this one cell has the outline of black. I'll go back to table cell options, strokes and fills, and set this back to 25%. So what that gives me is a slightly gray color. The cell fill that I have chosen is CMYK. It's 43, 0, 156. So by then changing the cell fill tint to 40% gives me a little bit darker color than the rows themselves, which allows this header row to show up nicely. If I click in the top row and go to table cell options, strokes and fills, the cell stroke is the same, but if I go down to the cell fill, color is still the same, but the tint is 20% instead of 40%. I could change this to 100 and it would be quite dark, or I could leave it at 20%, undo, and have it go back to 20%. I have a 1-inch margin on the left and the right. If I wanted to make this table just a little bit wider, I can choose to widen to a 1/2 inch, and now notice that all it did was move my whole table over to the left. So I need to move it all to the right. I can move my cursor so I get the left-right arrow and drag this over to the 8, but all that did was move my text frame. Every time we create a new table, we create a text frame, and then the table gets placed inside of that. If I move my cursor over to the very edge of the table itself, I get a double arrow, and I can click and drag, But what that does is it simply widens the one column. If again I move my cursor over there, get the double arrow, and now I hold down my Shift key and drag, now it revises every column to being just a little bit wider. And what I want to do is widen this one column and leave the rest as they were. The other thing that I want to do is select this whole top row and center the text above each column. So that's a little bit on working with a table that's already created. Let's go ahead and create our own. What I'm going to do is set up a calendar. So with, again, my text tool selected, I'm going to align it and drag down to the bottom right. And now I have my text frame selected, my cursor is flashing. Now I can go to the table menu and insert a table. And what I want is, for the body rows, I want 5 body rows, I want 2 header rows, and 7 columns. Now this first header row, I want to go up to the table menu, choose Cell Options, Rows and Columns, and I want this to be 1.25 inches exactly. And the maximum, since I don't want this to change, 1.25. Don't get any bigger, don't get any smaller. And click on OK. The second row, I go up to the table menu, Cell Options, Rows and Columns, and I want this to be 0.25 exactly. And I also don't want it to change. Now the rest of these, I could click and drag, but the easiest way, I want them to go all the way to the bottom of the page. And now I can select the rows, go up to the table menu, and choose Distribute Rows Evenly. And it splits those just like they need to be. This top row, I want to select and go to the table menu and merge cells. I can click on the center alignment, type in a date, select that date, and change the font size. Make it as large as I can, and go to the table menu, Cell Options, Text, and align this to the center. And then now with all of my text typed in, I can select that row and change the font size. 12 is probably as good as I'm going to get in terms of height. I want to center, make it bold italic, and change the color. I can select the rest of these rows and columns, go up to the table menu, Cell Options, Strokes and Fills, and make these, say, 3-point, change the color to a blue. I'll use the same color, but the tint, I just want 10%. And now if I go up to the preview menu, it hides everything else. That, in a nutshell, is creating a table in InDesign.